refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. With the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? First time?
Yes, we'll do this one.
Yes. Okay, what brings you here for the first time to this one?
You, Jeff.
Me. Bad idea.
You told me the other day, there is no mind.
Don't listen to what I say.
If I'm not supposed to, why even talk, man?
I know. That's the point. Why even talk? Right? It's funny, years ago when we did the Day of Silence retreat, it was downtown Temple, and the college kids going through their program, they go on the retreats, and so I did one there. And one of the kids shared after, there's the cleaning portion of the Day of Silence retreat, and so it was two of them were assigned the task of cleaning the refrigerator, and one of them shared afterwards that they'd never, so it's silent, right? Day of Silence, silent. And one of them shared that they'd never felt so connected to somebody in absolute silence, that they didn't even really know that well, as the two of them were just silently cleaning the refrigerator, Yeah. So why talk? It's a good question. I don't know. What else? First time here. Yeah, what brings you here?
Curiosity.
About
curiosity.
About curiosity, right on. Well, that'll be easy. Anyone else first time here? The temple or here? Yeah. What brings you here?
A friend recommended it.
Good friend, maybe? I guess we'll see. Yeah. What led you to, when they said, hey, you should go, did you bring it up to them? Did they say, hey, you need this? Or how did that all play out?
I heard about it and he suggested to check out the upstairs.
Yeah. Right on. This upstairs, not that upstairs.
Well, not upstairs.
All right. There's a rooftop pool deck on the upstairs from here, so I recommend checking that out. It's pretty nice. Anyone else first time? All right. Those of you who come back, why? Why keep showing up? Why keep coming back?
It's good to be consistent.
Consistent, yeah. What else?
Came last week for the first time. I have a recovery friend who recommended and comes here, and I'm just seeking to see what else is out there available to help quiet my crazy head.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, if you figure out how to help quiet the crazy head, let me know.
I will.
Yeah. I gave up years ago trying to figure out how to quiet the crazy head, and just learned to enjoy it. Be with it, embrace it, accept it. Maybe I've been failing miserably for 20-something years, but my head's never gotten quiet. In fact, it's probably louder than it's ever been. It just doesn't bother me. So, you can spend a few years trying to quiet it, and if that doesn't work, then just try to be friends with it. It's a lot. I found it a lot easier. Yeah. Anyone else want to share why they're here? Yeah.
I find a power in
being together with other people who are interested in a little more peace in the world.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
themselves, but also as a community. It's very meaningful to me.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm always inspired by all the people that show up to all this stuff. Because it means there's a lot of people that care a lot about being peaceful and happy and doing good things, And I think that's a beautiful thing, for sure. Anyone else want to share why they're here, why they keep showing up before we start? Yeah.
I look at it like going to the gym. Like my muscles wouldn't stay strong if I didn't work at it. And I feel like it's such simple concepts that it's really easy to like show up on and you feel like you got it. But the more I immerse myself in it, the more it becomes like ingrained in habit.
For sure. Yeah, it's a good point. And I joke about this a lot, more so on Saturdays, I think, but sometimes here too. Often people do, they hear this stuff once or twice, and it's like, oh, it really is. It's just I think what the Buddha taught was just common sense. And so we can hear it once or twice and be like, I got that. But the world out there and most of the circles that we're running in, with family or friends or work or school or whatever it is, aren't really taking a deep dive into this stuff. And so it really does become just reminders. Like I said, going to the gym, it's just training the mind over and over and over again to be mindful of the simple stuff, because it's so easy to forget. It really is easy to forget. So the constant practice, like anything we work to strengthen, is definitely important. So, all right, so with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here, thanks for showing up. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Yeah, there's chairs. Good to see you guys. A couple things to tell you before we begin. For those who might be brand new, nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. If you're on a bench or chair, also trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. If you are brand new, you're not trying to shut the mind off. You're not going to think nothing. You're not going to go blank. Your mind is going to continue to race, as it always does. I will say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or remind you to come back to present moment. All right? I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, Your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this isn't going to fix that. It'll help you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then make changes in your life. This is direct perception into the present moment. Learning to be mindful and aware of everything we think, everything we say, and everything we do. That's all. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. That's all. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time trying to change so many things that have happened in our lives. This practice is learning to be with life as it arises. And when you can learn to do that, your life will change. Most likely. Well, it'll definitely change, depends on how. Life changes every minute, every second, every breath. But learning to be with things as they are is really difficult. But that's this practice. And if you want to change things going forward, then you continue to work on what we think, what we say, and what we do. Coming from a place of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, called the four Brahma Viharas. But it is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. There are no certificates to hand out. It's just life. And some days life seems simple and easy and great, and some days life just seems like it sucks. And that's pretty much what you get. So, learning to be with that as it occurs is the practice. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with, and we use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. And to those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, put them on the chat box somewhere on your screen, and I'll do my best to respond there. So we'll open up to questions.
How do you practice focusing on one thing at a time?
You asked that question like 3 months ago. Yeah. Almost the exact same words. You can only, so the question was, for those who didn't hear it, how do you practice focusing on one thing at a time? My answer is the same. Despite what one may think with this world and multitasking and doing so many things at once and being so busy and, eating and walking and doing our homework and chewing gum and focused on whatever, you can only do one thing at a time. Your mind can only be at one point at a time. It might move super quick from one thing to the next. Eating, watching TV, right? Well, phones, TV, same thing, you know. I just saw, anyone see that? Someone now, they're coming out with like this mini TV. Did you see that? It reminded me of like going back to like the what were those called? Not the Walkmans, but when they came out like in 1982 with like those little TVs. Now they got us again, and it's like it looks like a 1950s TV, but it's literally like this big. Oh my God, we're all just screwed. But it's just one breath, one moment. It's all one at a time. We think we're doing multiple things at once, but it's just one. And for me, I think often, anytime the questions are along the lines of like, how do you cultivate focusing on one thing at a time, or how do you cultivate wisdom, or how do you cultivate compassion, things like that, I like to look at kind of the opposite of that. So if somebody says, for example, you know, Buddhist teachings on the three poisons, greed, anger, ignorance. So when the question is, well, how do you practice on, you know, the ultimate wisdom, which is how we kind of balance out the ignorance. Instead of looking at what ultimate wisdom is, my response is always, well, do you know when you're ignorant? And most people, yeah, I mean, not always, right? But pretty often we know when we're doing things, we're ignoring reality and we're lost in our own ego and craziness. So to me, the practice of ultimate wisdom would be to be ignorant less. The practice of ultimate compassion would to be angry less. So same thing, I think, from a practical standpoint, to the question of how does one cultivate focusing on one thing at a time, begin to become aware of how many things, even though you're not really, how many things you think you're focused on at once. Like eating and talking and looking at your phone and telling a story in your head. There's like 17 things going on at once. Music's on in the background, TV's over there, laundry's in, you know, there's like all these things going on. Try to eliminate a lot of those. And by default, you'll be focused more on one thing, or at the very least, less things. Kind of my comment earlier about, you know, the silence with cleaning the refrigerator. You know, next time you go to lunch with somebody, a friend, family member, loved one, whoever it is, and it's a practice I share a lot, but just sit, have a meal with them in silence. Not because you're angry at each other or, you know, you're in a fight, you don't want to talk, but, you know, you're having a good day, things are cruising around, you know, you're just going through it. And sit down and have lunch. Just be silent. And just focus on eating your food. Without looking at the phone, without looking at all the people, without talking about just random gossip and nonsense. Just eat your food. You know? See what that would be like. It would probably be super uncomfortable for a lot of people the first time. Because there's this like desire, craving to feel like, well, if you're across from somebody and you're eating, you must speak to them. Why? You know? Is there like some rule that says when you have a meal with somebody, you must speak? I don't know. I miss that rule. Try it in silence. Yeah, to me, monastery life, that was one of the coolest things. You're in there with like a couple thousand people, and it's absolute silent. You know? But when I came back and I told my mother that, and my parents and my mom said she couldn't imagine sitting in silence, you know. And nice, sweet Jewish mother having a meal in silence, that's like impossible. And she said, well, I guess if you're all wearing the same thing, you're all eating the same thing, and you all look the same, you know, you're in the robe, your heads are shaved, and you're eating the same thing. She said, then I guess there's nothing to talk about. So, yeah. What else? Hi, Dr. Dan from El Centro. Glad you're here. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
In your experience of meditation, how would you describe the relationship between meditation and intuition? And does meditation clarify intuition, or can what you think is intuition actually be a rabbit hole into wishful thinking?
Yeah. So the question was, in my experience of meditation, kind of around the connection between meditation, intuition. Are they connected? Are they the same? Are they different? So obviously, if 100 people lead you in meditation, they're going to tell you 100 different things. None of them necessarily right or wrong, good or bad, just different. And so I think it is important always to not think that the person, this is literally but also metaphor, the person up here, meaning whoever's leading you, that they have any clue about what they're talking about. They're making shit up just like everybody else. I don't care how many years they've been doing it, they're just telling you what they think. And they're just as unenlightened and ignorant as everybody else is. So first off, keep that in mind. So now my ignorant view on that is I see meditation and what you're referring to as intuition, even regardless of how you define intuition, which could be defined different ways, to me they're completely separate things. I loved what you said intuition, but this will apply anyways. For a lot of people in recovery, many of you know we have a huge recovery community here, and the 11th step is prayer and meditation. And so this was a prison group years ago, and the guy said, we were talking about that, and the guy said that the way he uses prayer and meditation is that he does his meditation first to allow himself to kind of calm, settle, clarity, focus, and then he goes into prayer. Because he said whoever he's praying to, if he's thinking about whatever, then whoever he's praying to is probably going to know what he's thinking about. So he uses the meditation to kind of calm and settle. And I think with intuition specifically, intuition's a little bit, again, I don't want to get into this, I'm just going to say it, but intuition is a little bit dangerous also because I've had a lot of intuitions in my life and they're just flat out wrong. So I think we got to be very careful. It's like, oh, my gut told me, my heart told me, my intuition told me, and then it was just the stupidest thing in the world. So just because we have intuition, just, be careful with that. But the meditation practice, you ever been really angry and made really wise decisions? No, right? So for me, the meditation practice allows oneself to just kind of settle like hot water on a stove. It's boiling. You take it off for 30 seconds, you put it back on the stove, it's immediately boiling again. You take it off for 5-10 minutes, put it back on, it takes longer until it boils again. So for me, with whatever emotion, stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression, whatever it might be, it's like we just roam around in this constant boiling state. And one little look, one little person, one little vehicle that gets in front of us, one little extra pump of latte that we didn't want, one little thing just triggers us and pisses us off. So I see meditation as a way to just come back to present moment, settled, calm, a little quieter, a little potentially clearer, a little more gratitude. And then whatever comes after that comes after that. But for those who are big on intuition, which I think is important as well, I still feel that a bit of a clearer, calmer mind might help with intuition. So it's not so wrapped up in emotions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Can you speak to not knowing? Because I feel like
Always.
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like what brings me to Buddhism, more so than anything else, is other religions seem to offer some sort of truth or promise or rules and all of these frameworks to fit in. And I feel like everything that I hear here is always the clarity comes from there being nothing to clarify. And
Yes.
the nothingness, and like the juxtaposition between clarity and nothing making sense, but that being the clarity. So,
Yeah.
can you make that all make sense?
No. Yeah, and usually I paraphrase things for those joining virtually, but I think that was loud enough, and I'm not going to try to paraphrase that. But, it's funny, I wasn't even going to bring it up, but I will with this because of this question. But, I started doing the Sunday class, and, I've been doing the Tuesdays and Saturdays forever in the same way, same thing. It's always different every time because different questions, things like that. But Sunday I wanted to do something really different. And probably 90% of the people who were there are used to sitting with me on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and it was completely different. And I got into a lot more of that. And it was, we're walking specifically through the Heart Sutra. But the essence for me of this practice and of this path is nothing is clear. And as soon as we think it's clear, we miss it. So, one person shared that they felt uncomfortable. I asked what was wrong. And for the most part, at that moment, nothing. But one person said they didn't understand. We read the Heart Sutra, recited it. They said they didn't understand it. And he's been coming sitting with me for years. So I was able to kind of, pick on him a lot. And, he might not show up for another 6 months, but he'll eventually come back. And he said that he didn't understand it. I said, so what's wrong with that? He was not okay with not understanding something. And yes, to your point about, this isn't about other religions, but yes, Buddhism is not, to me, about some box, some exact answers, it's obviously finding a path that works for each individual, where you're kind and compassionate and loving towards yourself and others, and that you're causing as little to no harm as possible. But as the Buddha said, the metaphor of 84,000 ways, there's 84,000 paths. Jesus said a lot of really great stuff. And I'm pretty convinced if every single person followed every single word of Jesus, we would all be completely enlightened. It has nothing to do with religion or religious figures. So if you try to put Buddhism into a box of some concrete thing, then you've missed all of what Buddhism is about. And what that means is, what are you left with? You're left with following. This is why the word intuition is kind of dangerous, because as an unenlightened, ignorant fool, I don't want to trust my instincts and my intuition, because that's dumb. But I want to experience and put into practice what I've learned and see what the outcome is. Is this causing less pain and suffering for myself and those around me? And one of my favorite expressions is, don't seek to be like the Buddha. Seek what the Buddha sought. And what he was after was these simple teachings. There is suffering and an ending of suffering. And what he was after was trying to figure out, how do we end suffering? And that's going to be different for every single person in this room. So, I think being confused and not understanding is really important on this path. And that's why, to me, I always default to the Heart Sutra, which, you have the fundamental core Buddhist teachings of Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path. And the Heart Sutra says very clearly, there is no suffering. There is no cause of suffering. There is no cessation of suffering, and there is no path. There is no wisdom or any attainment. With nothing to attain, Bodhisattvas relying on Paramita, which is perfection and wisdom, attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is supreme ultimate enlightenment. So what that all means is, with nothing to attain, you can attain enlightenment. But only if you realize there's nothing to attain. Once you think there's something to attain, then you give rise to the recognition of self and me and other and duality, and then you're chasing something and you're never going to get there. So I hope that clarifies it. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of going off that,
Yeah.
if there's nothing to obtain and being enlightened, get to enlightenment, you have to have nothing to obtain. Is it possible to reach enlightenment in today's world? Like in
Today's world versus what? India 2,500 years ago? Or they didn't have
maybe
TV?
even smaller in San Diego, I guess.
Say that last part, sorry.
Like in San Diego, like having nothing to obtain, it's pretty impossible to like survive.
Well, so first of all, just to clarify, it's not obtain, it's attain,
Oh, okay. then
which changes it a little bit, but I could still go off on what you just said too, but I just wanted to clarify that. The sutra itself is talking about nothing to attain, meaning
Gotcha.
the root cause of our suffering comes from craving and desire. So if we desire to attain something, then that's where the kind of difficulty comes in. Obtain, obviously different, meaning acquire and things like that. Let me just point this out. San Diego or anywhere else for that matter, we don't need to obtain probably 90% of the things we obtain.
Sure.
We like them, we want them, they feed our ego, our pride, our closets, you know? How many shirts you got?
Like 12?
That's it, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I lived in a van for a while, so.
Well, there you go.
A lot, but.
Do you need all 12
But it is
shirts?
my van.
Okay, so keep the van, but do you need 12 shirts?
No,
No,
I need like 5.
5. So you could get rid of 7 shirts, keep 5 shirts, you're good to go. And now 7 people who don't have shirts get a new shirt. Might not be new, but it's new to them. So we obtain a lot more than what we need. And we're also, I think, pretty quick to, well, I need this, I need that. We don't need it, we want it. Big difference. A little bit of food, a little bit of water. What else do we really need? San Diego or not? So, yeah. What else? Yeah.
So I know the Buddha taught the idea of impermanence, and even when he was around, he said there were Buddhas before me, there will be Buddhas after me. Even Buddhism is impermanence. One day it's just gonna be gone. And then,
Yeah.
so I guess with the way our world is moving, with all this technology, AI and all that stuff, you know, the way I see it is the moment that he passed away, it already started to decompose because his disciples broke off into the Theravada and Mahayana, right? So in a way, it already started like going downwards, but the core value was still there. It kind of lacked that unity, and everybody, as it spread through the cultures, it kind of did its own thing. How do you think the future Buddha is just going to come back and present its teachings again with just the integration of all this technology? I feel like people's desire is very different from 2,500 years ago, where people back then, they were just seeking truth to live a better life, where I feel like these days, people just want to do less through technology. Like they're using AI to do a lot of stuff. It's like, well, we can do this faster. Now you don't have to get up. Like, I don't even know what the end goal of AI is. Like, when are we ever going to be satisfied? Like, I like things easier, but not to the point where I'm just like a blob on the couch, not doing anything. So I guess in your opinion, like, what's this like second coming of revival of Buddhism like in the future? Like, how is that
Sure.
going to make people
Sure.
that again?
Yeah, so I think first off, similar question, San Diego, and you might have been talking about like how much it costs to live in San Diego, you know. I think we have to be careful, first off, before I even get to that, kind of comparing periods of time, right? So, yeah, sure, maybe 2,500 years ago in India when the Buddha was alive, they didn't have AI, but there was whatever was comparable on their scale. There was always more to get, more to have. The Buddha had all the wealth, all the riches, all the women. He had everything. The dude was a prince. right? I mean, whatever that came with, he had it all. Whatever was possible to obtain, it was at his beck and call, literally. Now, I think to compare that to stuff today is kind of irrelevant, because whatever, like, was the greatest thing to get that anyone would have been like, yo, I'm like 15, I want this, that existed then too. Just because it wasn't technology doesn't mean that that same desire wasn't there for something. So I hear these questions a lot around like, well, it must have been, it's so hard today compared to when the Buddha was alive. Why? There were things that they woke up and they were like, I want that. No different. What the things are different, but the level of craving or desire is still the same, I believe. But as far as, I just read something recently. I don't know if you've read much Krishnamurti. I think he's brilliant. And I just saw something recently where he said that, if people actually listened to the teachings of the Buddha, Buddhism wouldn't be necessary and it would fall away completely. In the Buddhist teachings historically, they refer to like a declining age, and when Buddhism, as we know it, will completely disappear, vanish, and be gone. But that's irrelevant of AI or any of that kind of stuff, right? Fortunately, for all sentient beings, Buddhism took care of that. They believed in rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, and multiple world systems. This will clarify it for you, so don't worry, right? And so there is Maitreya, the future Buddha, just waiting. He's just kicking back, chilling in what's called Tashita heaven. And when all of this shit blows up and everything is gone, and the Dharma age as we know it is gone and done and past, and whatever the world is in the future, Maitreya will be reborn into this Saha world, as they call it, this human world, and will come in to teach the Dharma. So, we're good to go. We can rest easy. Yeah. Or just take that Bodhisattva vow that says you will be reborn life after life endlessly to make sure that all sentient beings are free from suffering. And the important thing to understand about that is being free from suffering, as I said earlier, has nothing to do with being Buddhist or Buddhism. Just be free from suffering. That's what's most important. And whatever can bring that into our lives, I think, is wonderful. I don't spend too much time thinking about like the world getting faster and all that stuff. Like, how greedy are we every day? How much craving do we have? Desire do we have? How angry are we? How much do we ignore reality and get lost in our own pride and ego? Like, that's my focus. The rest of that stuff, it's,
Yeah, I guess I think about it more because I work in technology.
Yeah.
And then I see like the human nature craving for more, faster.
Sure.
Has been exponential as technology progresses.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, what's the end goal, guys?
I don't know, but you could probably ask AI. And
Yeah.
What else? Other questions?
Go for round two.
Go for it, man. We'll do one more and then we'll close.
So this one's a quick one, but enlightenment, like when you reach it, does that end the cycle of rebirth?
Why, you think you're close?
No. You're on the line.
So the question was, does enlightenment end the cycle of rebirth? Is that what your question? So one of my favorite Zen expressions is, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Don't worry about enlightenment. Don't worry about nirvana. what's the point? To ponder it, to be curious about it. I don't know about you, but I'm nowhere close to even knowing what that feels like. So, I know early on in Buddhist practice for me, it was kind of fun to like, look at all these things like nirvana, enlightenment, who's been enlightened? Are there anyone around today? You know, is there someone living in like Cleveland right now that's enlightened? You know, like all wrapped up in all that. And after a while, it's just like, that doesn't change my life at all. The answers to those questions, because I was there, I used to ponder all that. It's meaningless to me. Like, can I be nice or am I an asshole? That's it. But before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. But technically, being enlightened, if you're going to look at like textbook definitions stuff, you still generate karma. And your karma is what keeps you being reborn. When the Buddha died, they say, he was 80 years old, that he entered in what's called parinirvana, which means nirvana with no remainder. And what that means is nirvana literally means, you know what nirvana means? Other than a cool rock band?
Not really.
To extinguish. So think of like a flame, right? When you blow out the candle, where does the flame go?
That's a good question.
That's a good question, right? That's nirvana, to extinguish. So when the Buddha died, they said that he entered into parinirvana, which just means nirvana with no remainder, meaning no rebirth. No rebirth, meaning he neutralized his karma. Body, speech, and mind. That's why at every meditation I always say, with the body still, speech quiet, and the mind beginning to settle. Because that's what we're working on, is stilling, for lack of better words, neutralizing our karma. We can sit relatively still. We can remain silent. But then we're left with the one thing that causes all the problems in our world, and that's our head. Right? So, they say the Buddha, when he awakened, he was 35. He became enlightened. Right? Sitting under the Bodhi tree. But then he taught for 45 years, roaming around. And when he was roaming around, he's generating a lot of karma. So he didn't like become enlightened and then just like, poof, disappear, you know? He kept going for 45 years. And at his time of death, that was when they say he was able to neutralize karma, body, speech, and mind. And again, you're asking for me more of a, not even more of a, but definitely a Mahayana Buddhist, Zen Buddhist practitioner, where my practice is the Bodhisattva Path and the Bodhisattva practice. So that is where that vow is, to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering. So even if you were like, you know, the Bodhisattva Path says you're like right there about to enter into nirvana and you're like good to go, you know, the pearly gates are opening up and you're just like, ah. And then you're like, no, I'm going back. That's the Bodhisattva vow.
I didn't know that, so thank you.
Now you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because the practice, and I'll close with this thought, is, right, the Bodhisattva Path, Bodhisattva means awakened being, is the idea is that you use these practices called the Paramitas. Translates loosely to perfections, but generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. You use these practices to go from one side of the shore, say a river, which is samsara, the world of suffering that we're in, right? To free yourself from the cycle into nirvana. No more suffering. So imagine though you're using the Bodhisattva, or you're using the Paramitas on this Bodhisattva path, and you're in the boat, you get all the way to the other side, and you're like, okay, I'm done. But then you look back and you realize there's a whole bunch of people back there. They need the boat because they're suffering. So you could choose to enter into the pearly gates, or you can say, nope, I'm going back because they need a boat. Probably a lot more than just a boat, but you see? So that's the fundamental difference between the Theravada school of Buddhism, that the focus is on nirvana and awakening, and that's it. And the Mahayana path, which is developed about 500 years later, where it's the Bodhisattva Path. So 2 different schools, both beautiful. You know, they're not killing each other over which view is right or wrong. So, all right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before y'all head out, we'll have our Dharma Bum host Eddie do a couple quick announcements. And we are looking for, if anybody's interested and already comes on Tuesday nights pretty consistently and wants to help the Tuesday night hosts, we're looking for one more Tuesday night host, and you get to do this.
Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. Hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Eddie. So if you do want to host, let me know. We'd need you probably once to maybe twice a month. Thank you all. Thanks, Eddie.